What's going on, my friends? Hope you guys are having an amazing day. I'm coming here live to make a response to Noam Chomsky's recent BBC interview, which came out yesterday or a few days ago. I'm going to wait about 10 seconds for everybody to get into this live stream before I begin my analysis of that and response to, once again, Noam Chomsky's BBC interview that came out just a few days ago. I'm going to wait 5 seconds for 3, 2, 1. So the reason I'm making this is because, I've been a fan of the scholar Noam Chomsky for a long time. I think he speaks a lot of truths, but his new interview with BBC was filled with just complete inaccuracies, false assumptions, and false statements that I think are very wrong. And I'm going to state why, and you could tell me what you think in the comments, because I'm a fan of Noam Chomsky. I'm not a hater. I'm not closed-minded, but I felt it was just filled with inaccuracies. And the first biggest one that I think of, and I'm going to explain why, is he said that he thinks the reason for this election was white supremacy. He said that's the reason for this Donald Trump win, because it was because of white supremacy. And that's just ridiculously false for multiple reasons. The first clearest reason is nobody chose these candidates. If people chose Donald Trump out of a pool of 1,000 people and all sorts of well-spoken, honest, trustworthy people, I'd maybe give you that a little bit. I would say, yeah, that you have a point there. But we only had two candidates. We had one of the biggest known criminals in politics, Hillary Clinton, who has virtually no stance on anything. She had no press conferences. She didn't rally. She didn't connect with people. And Donald Trump. Those were the only two choices, because the DNC has already proven that it's a rigged system. So Bernie Sanders, I'm not even going to have him in this argument. He had no chance of winning with the superdelegate system. So we had two choices. The fact that Noam Chomsky could get on camera and legitimately say he thinks that Donald Trump won because of white supremacy, when nobody in America made those two choices. Those two choices were handed to us. We had any of the Republicans, who Noam Chomsky would have said it was white supremacy anyway, versus Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton's policies in the Middle East are drastically different than Donald Trump's. A lot of people voted for him because of the Middle East. A lot of people voted for him for jobs. A lot of people voted for him because he was talking about border security while Hillary Clinton was empty. And Noam Chomsky is sitting there, a very intelligent man, saying that the reason that Donald Trump won is because of white supremacy. And we just had an African-American president for 8 years. Think about the reversal. Imagine if the majority of the United States was African-American, was black, and we had a white president for 8 years. And then we had two choices of two black presidents, and one was chosen. Then we were like, well, they're black supremacists. Think about any other race. We literally just had an African-American president for 8 years, and now we have a white president from a pretty much rigged system that we only had two choices. And you're going to denounce all of America for being white supremacists when you know, Noam Chomsky, that millions of people voted for him because in Syria and in the Middle East, his policies were completely different. What he was saying when he was running is that he was going to stop regime change and he was going to try to slow down war. Hillary Clinton was guaranteeing more war with Russia, expansion. She already destroyed Libya. People know what she did in Haiti. People know what she did in the United States. And he sits there and says that this election is because of white supremacy. That's blasphemy from somebody who is a self-proclaimed intellect. If you want to talk about another intellectual person, Cornel West, Princeton University professor and a very smart man, he had spoken on this and he was a lot more honest about it. I would say check out Cornel West. When he talked about it, he said that yes, while it may have been a small factor, it was absolutely not the reason for the election. That's Cornel West. Look at what he said. And I agree. I think it's fair to say that a white supremacist would be more inclined to vote for Donald Trump than Hillary Clinton. I think that's a fair argument. I think it's a fair argument to say that there's a small percentage of people who did vote for Donald Trump who, have the mental illness that is called white supremacy. But I think it's completely inaccurate and unfair to say that Donald Trump won the election because of white supremacy. This is an election that nobody chose. We had two candidates, and it wasn't, we didn't have an outstanding candidate who was a lot better than Donald Trump. So that's a complete lie, a complete fabrication. And I'm kind of disturbed that he said that with a straight face, because other left leaders such as Cornel West will admit to you that that's not at all true. And the second one I want to talk about is he talked about climate change. And he actually said in this interview, he said that ISIS was less than a threat than Donald Trump was. He said ISIS was less dangerous than people who didn't believe in climate change. And while I understand where he was going with this, because taking care of the environment is very, 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 very important, this is just a classic move of why the debate is going nowhere on that, because scientists like Bill Nye, intellectuals like Noam Chomsky, they're not having the debate. They're not showing facts anymore. They're not showing, unbiased statistics. They're saying you're dangerous, you're worse than ISIS, you're a criminal, you should be in jail if you don't believe in climate change. And there's a lot of things that go into this argument. I am an environmentalist myself. I think we should clean the air, clean the water. I think we should let indigenous cultures protect their oceans, protect their lakes, protect their water. I'm totally pro-environment. I think it's very, very important that we take care of the environment and we monitor how quickly that the climate is changing, because if we can influence it, we absolutely should, and I don't think we're doing enough at all. So I agree with you there. But the climate change debate is totally flawed for multiple reasons. First of all, we haven't explored 95% of the ocean. The smartest human scientist on the planet hasn't explored the ocean. Look how much of the ocean is the Earth. It's 67% of the Earth's surface, and we haven't explored 95% of that. Do the math. So we don't know what's really going on in the ocean. The Earth is absolutely enormous. There's a lot of studies that, while they always show you pictures of the ice melting, which I think is fair because the ice is melting, in the Antarctic, if you look it up, the ice is actually at record high ice levels. And that's fine. I'm not saying that climate change isn't existing, but how many times are you going to show the one side and not show the other? If you're showing an honest argument, you're going to show both sides and explain, well, that's why this ice is melting faster. So the debate is totally skewed. And another thing that really stands out to me about the climate change debate, which makes no sense, all of the people who push it very hardly, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Noam Chomsky, Bernie Sanders, Bill Nye, they never talk about the animal agriculture industry. They never talk about all of the natural methane releases. They never talk about all of the natural CO2 releases. And they never talk about natural ways of curing climate change and curing the CO2 and methane problem, which is planting more trees. So how are all of the leading climate change experts, climate change scientists, and climate change politicians going to continuously jam the fossil fuel argument down our throat? It's fossil fuels, we got to stop fossil fuels, only fossil fuels. They never talk about the animal agriculture industry. Half of the United States is animal agriculture land, specifically for beef. Cows produce a lot of methane, more so than the fossil fuel industry. If you look at the charts of CO2 and fossil fuel, animal agriculture is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, polluters of CO2 and methane. And these are greenhouse gases, which are not good for our environment. So how come Bernie Sanders and Bill Nye and Noam, how come they never talk about the animal agriculture industry? I made a video earlier of Neil deGrasse Tyson eating wings and talking about In-N-Out being delicious, and that's fine. In-N-Out is delicious, but he didn't once mention the animal agriculture industry, and I've heard him multiple times mention climate change. And this is a problem. The Earth is a massive, massive system, much more massive than we are. While I totally agree our actions will have a reaction, and I do believe it's happening, the debate is totally skewed because they just want to push their fossil fuel agenda, and they never talk about animal agriculture. So this is my response to you guys. Why don't we talk about the whole thing? You don't talk about all of the natural occurrences in the world that in many cases, such as volcanoes and other things, that produce so much CO2 and sometimes methane that it's more than all of the cars in the United States. And I'm not saying we don't have an effect on the environment. I'm not saying we shouldn't switch to clean energy as fast as we can. I think we absolutely should. I think we should be moving faster on it. I think our brightest minds should be looking for solutions ASAP, as soon as possible. But we're never going to get to the root of this problem because all people say is climate change is real. If you disagree, you're dangerous. That's not how you debate. That's not how you show arguments. I've seen brilliant scientists that won't get any press on the Joe Rogan Experience, and he's showing how there's an ice age coming, and that all of the climate change, it's a natural cycle. It's getting hotter in some places, it's getting cooler in other places, and he's saying that it happens all the time in human history, and there's nothing we can do to change it. We could possibly accelerate it at a small rate, but he says it's the Earth. It's going to happen whether we like it or not. And me personally, like I said, I do consider myself an environmentalist. I think we should slow down on our beef consumption. I think that these politicians, instead of pushing fossil fuels so much, they should talk about our beef consumption and tell people to eat less beef. Tell people of all the ways that they could plant trees and combat the fact that we're slashing the Amazon, we're destroying trees. And this is just another person that I've once loved that's really disappointing me in Noam Chomsky, because he completely lied about the election with his analysis. And two candidates that nobody chose. We were given Jeb Bush, Ted Cruz, or Donald Trump, and Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders wasn't even an option. And even if he was, if people voted for Donald Trump, it doesn't mean they're a white supremacist. That's not what Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump is. There's economic reasons, there's foreign policy reasons, there's some people don't want socialism and communism coming into the United States, because a lot of people have lived in socialist and communist countries, and it has almost always ended bad. I saw a good Jordan Peterson speech yesterday, and he was saying, of course, and I agree with this, people can't wave Nazi flags all over the place because we know the terrible, disgusting history of the Nazi culture. But there's millions of communists and anarchists and socialists who wave the hammer and sickle. And if you look at history, that era killed more people than Nazis did. So why are they allowed to wave this hammer and sickle, and anybody that doesn't agree with their failed policies is racist and sexist and xenophobic because we don't want socialism? I did more research on Noam Chomsky, and he is pro-anarchy. He believes in anarchism, and I'm willing to have a debate. I'm not ruling it out, but that's complete lack of laws. That's a lawless society where it's even more drastic than the libertarians who want a limited government. You have the libertarians who want a limited government. You have conservatives who want, a smaller government. You have, socialists, Democrats, and liberals who want a bigger government. And then you have people like Noam Chomsky who wants absolutely no government whatsoever. And that's a pretty, radical opinion. And I'm not saying to not have a debate. I would love to debate. I'm not going to write him off as an anarchist. I think he's a very intelligent person. I think he's clearly a brilliant intellectual mind, but he once again is summarizing all of the problem with a lot of the intellectuals from the left. They don't want to have a debate. They don't want to be honest anymore. They want to lie to push their agenda. And it's really sickening for me to see that he would literally say that this election was because of white supremacy, and that, climate change deniers are worse than ISIS. This is, very, I think, a very flawed argument, and I was confused at that interview. And I would love to talk to people. I would love to have a back and forth debate. I would love to talk about climate change. I would love to talk about this election. I would love to talk about, the sickness that is known as white supremacy, and the fact that there are a small percentage of people who have that sickness, as I would call it, because that's a disgusting mentality. I don't promote or, allow that in my life at all, and I don't condone that in anybody I see around. But, he sounds a lot like Hillary Clinton and the Democrats, just calling everybody who doesn't agree white supremacists. Oh, you want to have a debate about, border security? You want to have a debate about the refugee crisis? You want to have a debate about economics, and foreign policy? Oh, you're a racist if you don't agree with socialism, and you don't want bigger government, and you don't want anarchy, and you don't want, what I want. You're a white supremacist, you're a racist, you're a sexist. I mean, it's a very failed mentality, and the fact that this guy is, considered one of the brightest minds currently living in the United States, and I think, in some cases I'm sure he is. I mean, it didn't seem like a very intellectual and factually based interview to me. I was pretty disturbed, being that I've always been a fan of what he's had to say. So let me know what you think. I'm going to end this video here, and I'm going to post my links below. Thank you for paying attention, and have a good week.